Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, and welcome to this horror DVD movie review video as part of my current series where I'm taking a look at random horror movies from my DVD collection. Ones that I haven't seen before, and ones that have some relation to summer, the time of the year that we're in. That's certainly the case today. We're going to go back to 1975 and take a look at a nature attacks kind of horror movie, and that is Bug from 1975. And I know, especially where I live in the Midwest, that bugs are a huge part of the summertime festivities up here. So yeah, Bug I have on DVD here. The tagline is fiery, hungry, and unstoppable. Pray they don't invade your house. So yeah, from 1975, Bug. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Bug is a 1975 American horror film directed by Janot Janot Jano Schwark. He's the same guy that directed Jaws too. Jano Schwark, I believe is how you pronounce it, and written by William Castle and Thomas Page from Page's novel The Hippopotamus Plague. Shot in Panavision, it is the last film that Castle was involved in before his death in 1977. The film stars Bradford Dillman, Joanna Miles, and Richard Gilliland. So the film initially depicts a new insect species which faces extinction. A widowed scientist crossbreeds the species with cockroaches, creating a sentient. Wait a minute, creating a. I'm having I'm having trouble reading and pronouncing. Sent, Sentient. Why am I having trouble with this word? Basically, he's creating a hybrid species of insects. So basically, the movie opens with an earthquake that releases a species of previously unknown insects, which can create fires by rubbing their legs together. Eventually, however, most of the bugs die because they cannot survive in the low air pressure on Earth's surface. So yeah, that's the setup and the premise. So the cast is Bradford Dillman as Professor James Perimeter, Perimeter, Parmitter. Joanna Miles is Carrie Permitter. Richard Gilland is Gerald Metbaum. Jamie Smith Jackson is Norma Tacker. Alan Fudge is Professor Mark Ross. Jesse Vint as Tom Tacker. And Patty McCormick as Sylvia Ross. So, yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast from the 1975 horror film Bug. Not to be confused, by the way, with the 2006 horror movie or thriller movie Bug, which I also have in my collection, and I'll have to watch and review one of these days. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get into my review for this movie. So this was an interesting movie. It's one of those movies. Of course, they did a lot of in the 70s and even before that, but especially in the 70s, it seemed like there were a lot of nature attack movies, whether it's insects, rodents, wild animals, you know, and they have beyond that too. I know in the 2000s they did a whole bunch of either remakes or sort of reimaginings of those kind of movies. So, but the 70s was definitely a time for it. So, um, yeah, Bug is a. I wasn't expecting much from it. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. I thought it would be kind of a low budget, nature attack sort of horror movie that really wasn't going to hold up very well today. But I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised. I had a pretty good time with this movie. Um, so one of the things I really enjoyed and that surprised me was the practical effects. I thought the movie did a really good job of having believable practical effects, starting right from the beginning with the earthquake sequence. Um, it's a really good sequence of different effects taking place. Whether in this, it's like a church, I think, and it starts to crumble and decay with the earthquake. I thought that was well done. I thought the bugs were pretty well done. The close-ups on they used real bugs, which I found out after the fact, and that really lends itself well to in this movie. The fact that they used real bugs, and you can't get any more practical than that. That really held up well, and then the impending fire sequences as well. I thought were really well done from a practical standpoint, especially when you consider this movie was made in the mid '70s. So So yeah, very well done from a practical effects standpoint. It really held up and really worked. I thought the idea of how these bugs came to be and what they could do, creating fire, was a really effective and really terrifying. Um, was really effective and really terrifying. It made for a really effective nature on attack horror premise. So yeah, I have to give them credit for that. The movie does a really good job with those sequences. There are some genuinely creepy and surprising sequences throughout the movie that felt real and relatable and kind of disturbing, especially one having to do with a cat fairly early on in the movie, right after this earthquake takes place, and this cat is sort of matting down in the field, and he starts nibbling at this bug, and one thing leads to another, and it's going to be kind of a hard scene for a lot of people to watch, probably. Um, but yeah, you got scenes of a bug crawling up on people, crawling in people's hair, etc. It's just very effective, very relatable, very. It's one of those things that I'm sure a lot of people watching really be cringe on. They'll be like, just really, and especially if you're somebody that's like my wife, for example, that goes nuts when it comes to bugs anyway and insects of any kind. um she kind of freaks out by him. So yeah, they did a good job in that regard. I thought the acting in this movie was really solid, especially by Bradford Dillman, who really becomes the main character of this movie, especially in the second half. He does a really good job portraying different that he starts out in this movie just like everybody else, trying to figure out what's going on, being a scientist, trying to figure out what these insects, where they come from, what they can do, how to stop them. And then it kind of midway through the movie, something happens, and then he kind of becomes an obsessive, uh, wanting to sort of make a hybrid of this creature. I'm not really sure why, which I'll get into with my cons. The movie doesn't really do a good job in that regard as far as explaining it, but he does a really good job of portraying this character in this movie. I thought it was really well directed by Janot. I think it's Janot Schwark. With the camera work, the filming, he does a good job effectively creeping out the viewer with these bug sequences. Yeah, I thought he really did a good job of directing this movie, with some of the shots and camera work, especially. Um, it's probably why he got Jaws 2, I'm guessing. I'm not really sure, but because Jaws 2 came out a few years after this movie. In fact, this movie was actually released the same year that the original Jaws was released. So that was interesting, but he does a good job here. I'm not really sure what that was. So just ignore it. The death scenes are really effective. They're really creepy and unnerving because they feel real. Um, okay, so sorry, I had to do an edit there. I had to go out and see what all the noise was about, but um, nothing major. So just my son running his cars along the wooden floor that we have in our house, but which he'll probably still be doing here, even though I asked him to wait. But the death sequences are really, really effective, really creepy. You get a lot of characters that start on fire from these bugs. I talked about the cat already, which is going to be unnerving to a lot of people. It just they have a they do the director, the acting, they all do a really good job of making it feel real, like you're watching real characters that this is happening to. It doesn't feel like a movie, and that's the highest compliment that I can give this movie, quite frankly. And then my final pros, I like the fact that this movie ended on a really dark, sour note for our characters. There's no real resolution or successful outcome to stopping these bugs. In fact, the actions that one of our characters take in the second half of this movie end up making it where the bugs are even more unstoppable and even more problematic for the people around this town. So I think that makes for a really effective horror movie. It's why Black Christmas from 1974 is one of my favorite slasher movies, horror movies, though, really, is because it's not a happy ending. And sometimes I know there needs to be resolution. You kind of want the characters to get a break, but I also think movies are effective. Horror movies are effective when they end not on such a happy note. And that's definitely the case in this movie, and particularly for our main character of Professor James Permitter here. So yeah, those are my pros for Bug from 1975. Getting into some cons with the movie, like I mentioned earlier, I don't really follow or understand why the professor was doing these experiments on this bug during the second half of the movie, instead of just trying to find a way to get rid of them or kill them for good. It really made no sense to me. I don't think the movie did a good job of explaining it or referencing it. The consequences of what he was doing were kind of foreseeable, especially having it be a horror movie having to do with nature on attack. So I understand that he lost, well, spoiler alert, after 50 years almost. But basically, his wife succumbs to one of these bug attacks, and so he's really down and depressed and coping with her loss. But it still doesn't make sense to me why he decides to try to hybrid this class of insects with roaches. Um, did he think that'd be easier to kill them, maybe? Or that they wouldn't be able to start fires. I'm not really sure. If anybody's seen this movie and they know the answer, they can comment down below. But that was a big con for me in this movie. I just didn't understand. I felt like the movie could have been shortened up a little bit too by 10 or 15 minutes, especially for this type of movie, this type of story and premise. I feel like you want these nature attack horror movies to be somewhere around 85 to 95 minutes tops. And this one just about hits 100 minutes. So not very long, but I would say 5 to 10 minutes could have been cut off here. Well, the second half of the movie was interesting, sort of having this one man go crazy, becoming obsessive with these bugs in a room premise that strays away from the first half of the movie, which was much more of a this earthquake and leads to these insects on attack, nature on attack. I can't help feel I can't help but feel the movie might have been better overall had they continued with what the first part of the movie started. Even though it's kind of predictable for these movies and it kind of goes with the grain. They tried to take a route that doesn't go with the grain, but they didn't do a good job of it because they didn't give the proper character motivations as to why this main character was doing this in the second half of the movie. So I have to say, in this case, it might have been better if they would have just stuck with the status quo, so to speak. Um, which is how are they going to escape and stop these monstrous bugs? Like I said, it would have been more typical of these type of movies, but in this case, I think it would have might have been okay, unless they would have done a better job giving character motivation for the second half of the movie. It really comes down to the two halves of this movie. They're very different, and I don't think they do a good job with that. They either should have stuck with the first half of the movie being the whole movie, or they should have given better character motivations and better explanation of why this main character decides to go ape shit basically in the second half of the movie to do what he's doing. That ends, of course, in his demise and probably everybody else's as a result. So definitely some cons there, but overall, guys, I enjoyed this movie Bug from 1975. Definitely glad to have it in my collection. I don't know if there's a Blu-ray that exists for it. I don't necessarily think I need to upgrade to Blu-ray for this movie. I think this is fine as a DVD. I think I'm going to give this movie a 6.5 out of 10. I think for what it is, from the time that it was made, with the acting, the directing, and some of the sequences, I think it's pretty effective and pretty good. So 6.5 out of 10 for Bug from 1975. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of this movie. If you've seen it, do you like it? Do you not like it? Why or why not? Comment down below. Please like this video and hit the little notification bell down below so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews. And please be sure to subscribe to my channel down below as well so you don't miss any of my great horror content. Not only the rest of this series, but what I have coming out the rest of the year. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope you're enjoying this series. We're, what, 6 or 7 movies in, at least 3 or 4 more to go, I believe. I want to say this was 6, so there's 4 more to go. We're going to try to get 10 in here before the end of this series. But yeah, other than that, I hope everybody's having a good summer. Everybody's doing well and stay scared. Bye.